week 5 of our History 101 course. As usual, during this week, you can find all of our assignments on our homepage in Canvas. They also are listed in the syllabus. This week, you will be learning about how the colonies expanded and the tensions they experienced with both the French and the British government. It lays the foundation for the American Revolution, which we will be studying next week. You will be reading Chapter 4 in the textbook. You will watch this video. You will watch a documentary, Boston, Bloody Boston. And you can watch this video in one of two ways. You can either watch it on YouTube. It's a poor quality and it doesn't have good closed captioning. If you need closed caption, you should watch it through this link that takes us to the library. Also, it's a much higher quality video if you watch it through the library link. If you have trouble logging into the library, please email me and I can help you with that. Also, please remember to complete Inquisitive Chapter 4 and make sure you join our student set. If you are having any trouble with Inquisitive, go ahead and watch this video. I've left this up here for you. You need to take the written Week 5 test and also participate in the discussion about the Declaration of Independence. And this work is due by Sunday, September 27th. This week you are reading Chapter 4, From Colonies to States, 1607 to 1776. This chapter examines the growing colonies and the British government's conflictual relationship with the French and their own colonists. The chapter begins with a comparison between the French and British colonies of North America. Among other things, the French colonies were far less populated and more integrated with the Indians than the British. And you can see in this map, the tan areas are the areas settled by the French, and the green are the areas claimed and settled by the British. And the striped areas are areas of disagreement and dispute. The chapter moves on to explain the British colony's changing attitudes towards its colonists. Until the mid-1700s, the British treated the colonists with salutary neglect, meaning that as long as the colonists followed the rules of the British government, they were given political and economic freedom. This shifted as the economic philosophy of mercantilism led the British to begin to control colonial economics. So mercantilism, as you can see by this chart, was an economic relationship between the colonies and the mother country. Up until this point, the British had used the colonies certainly as a source of raw materials, but the colonists had also been trading with other nations like the Dutch. With mercantilism, the British and many other nations began to believe that they needed to keep colonial trade to themselves. So it was a self-contained system. So if you look at this chart, the colonies would supply raw resources to England, like lumber, silver, fur, foodstuff. They have gold on here, but this is also referring to the Spanish colonies. They'd sell these raw resources at low prices to the mother country, England, which would in turn use them to produce manufactured products that the mother country would sell back to the colonists at high prices. So the British began to believe that they needed to keep all of this wealth within the system, and they did not permit the colonists to trade certain goods with other nations. Also, as the British fought a series of wars, they desperately needed money. They began to tax the colonists because the colonists were actually paying far lower taxes than the people in England. Meanwhile, England was undergoing its own political turmoil, and the chapter describes how the balance of power was shifting dramatically back and forth between the monarch and Parliament. The middle portion of the chapter deals extensively with the 7 Years' War between the French and England. And if you look here, this map shows in brown the French claims in North America, and in green the British, and then in purple New Spain. This is before the 7 Years' War, and this map shows after the 7 Years' War and the Treaty of the 7 Years' War. And this green territory now was all being claimed by the British, and the purple all by the Spanish. In North America, the French lost their territory, leaving the British as the clear dominant power in North America. The remainder of the chapter explores the growing tensions between the British and the colonists. It lists and discusses series of actions by the British that frustrated the colonists and explains the colonial response. The colonists began to act in greater and greater unity as they resisted British taxation and political restriction. This all culminated with the Declaration of Independence, and the chapter concludes with the initial battles of the war at Lexington and Concord. So in this image, you can see Paul Revere's drawing of Boston Harbor, and the artists at the time liked to show ships coming in and out and coming and going from harbors, and that was an indication of economic prosperity. But here you can see the ships are docked off harbor, waiting to be able to land. This is Ben Franklin's political cartoon. Initially created during the 7 Years' War, it actually is more often associated with the American Revolution. And this cartoon depicts a snake that's been segmented. And each of these segments is one of the colonies: South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. And his argument here during the 7 Years' War was that if they were to defeat the French, all of the colonies would need to work together. And then, of course, this was also meaningful during the American Revolution, as the argument again was that the colonies needed to work together, and what would become the states needed to pull together to defeat the British. And finally, the chapter, as I mentioned, concludes with a discussion of the battles at Lexington and Concord. So I hope you enjoy this week's material and have a great week.